Megan never looked for trouble. She wasn't the kind of person who argued with people or tried to stand out. Every day she showed up to her job at a small diner called Lancaster Grill. It wasn't fancy, just a little place tucked between a gas station and a laundromat in Columbus, Ohio. But for her, it paid the bills. She believed in working hard, respecting others, and staying quiet when things got messy. That was how she had been raised. For almost 3 years, she served food, smiled at strangers, and went home tired but proud that she could send a little money to her younger brother in college. She thought she had life figured out. But what she didn't know was that one small act of kindness, something as simple as serving a man a cup of coffee, was about to change her life forever. At Lancaster Grill, things weren't always fair. Some of her coworkers treated customers differently depending on how they looked. If a man walked in wearing a suit, they would rush to serve him with smiles. But if someone came in with dirty work boots or clothes that looked worn, they were often ignored. Megan hated watching it happen, but she kept her head down. Once she had spoken up, and Beth, a senior waitress, mocked her in front of everyone, saying, "You don't get paid extra for being a saint." Since then, Megan had learned to stay quiet. She had bills to pay and she couldn't risk losing her job. Then one quiet Wednesday night, the bell above the door rang. A man walked in, older, dressed simply, nothing flashy. Megan noticed the way he paused, scanning the room, almost like he already expected to be ignored. And he was right. Beth didn't look up from her phone. Jason, another server, glanced at him once and went back to his conversation. The silence in the room was heavy. Megan felt it too. For a second, she thought about staying out of it, pretending not to notice. That would be safer. But then she saw the way the man waited, like he was giving them one last chance to prove him wrong. Megan couldn't just stand there. She grabbed a menu, walked over with a smile, and said, "Evening, sir. Just you tonight?" His shoulders relaxed and he nodded. She treated him like he mattered, took his order, refilled his coffee, and even suggested the salmon. Behind her, she felt the stares, the smirks of her coworkers, but she kept going. It felt right. The next morning, Megan walked into work uneasy. Something felt off. Her manager, Tom, called her into the office right away. He didn't waste a second. "We're letting you go," he said flatly. Megan blinked, shocked. She had worked there for years, never missed a shift, never been late. She knew exactly why this was happening. Her act of kindness had put a target on her back. Tom gave no reason, just handed her her final notice. Megan left the office with her apron in her hand, her chest burning with anger and fear. Beth smirked as she walked past. Jason avoided her eyes, but she knew they were both satisfied. Out in the parking lot, Megan sat in her car, gripping the wheel. How would she pay rent now? How would she help her brother? She had lost everything overnight. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Megan," a calm voice said, "this is Richard Lawson. I'm the man you served last night." Her breath caught. He continued, "I wasn't just there for dinner. I own Lancaster Grill." Megan froze. Richard explained how he visited his restaurants undercover to see how staff treated people. "And you," he said firmly, "were the only one who did her job the right way." Then he gave her the shock of her life. "I want you to come back." As the new manager, the next morning, Megan walked into Lancaster Grill again, but this time everything was different. Beth and Jason's faces twisted in confusion. Tom stepped out of his office already irritated, ready to remind her she didn't work there. But then Richard walked in. Calm, confident, he faced the staff and said, "As of today, Lancaster Grill has new management. Tom, you're finished. Megan is the new manager." The room fell silent. Beth's smirk disappeared. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. Megan stood tall, heart racing, but for the first time she felt respect. The days that followed weren't easy. Some staff resisted, a couple even quit. But slowly the energy of Lancaster Grill shifted. Customers noticed the change. People who had once felt unwelcome now smiled when they walked in. Younger staff began to follow Megan's example, treating everyone with dignity. Even the kitchen crew, who had always kept quiet, started speaking up. The diner became alive in a new way. And Megan, she finally felt proud not just as a waitress but as a leader. She had been fired for doing the right thing, but that same choice gave her everything she never expected. In the end, her story proved that kindness can cost you in the moment, but it always finds a way to give you back more than you ever imagined. Megan had spent almost 3 years at Lancaster Grill, and in that time she had learned the rhythm of the place. It wasn't fancy, just a roadside diner tucked between a gas station and a laundromat, the kind of spot where truckers came for strong coffee, families came for Sunday pancakes, and regulars sat at the counter reading the morning paper. From the outside, it looked ordinary, maybe even forgettable, but inside, Megan had seen enough to know the place carried two faces, one for customers who looked like they belonged, and another for those who didn't. On paper, the job was simple: take orders, serve food, keep the coffee cups filled. But Megan knew there was an unspoken rule book her coworkers followed, and it was one she could never agree with. A man in a suit got polite conversation, quick service, and smiles. A construction worker in paint-stained clothes got rushed service and barely a hello. Families dressed neat were treated warmly, while tired single parents dragging kids behind them were seen as a burden. Megan noticed it all. She hated it, but she also knew speaking up came with a price. She had already learned that lesson once. Months earlier, she had made a small remark when Beth, the senior waitress, left a table waiting far too long while she leaned against the counter scrolling on her phone. Megan had quietly pointed it out, thinking she was helping, but Beth turned and stared her down with a smirk. "You don't get paid extra for being a saint, Megan," she had said in front of the others. Everyone laughed, and from then on, Megan understood. If she wanted peace, she had to keep her head low. Still, it ate at her. Every shift, she watched her coworkers pick and choose who deserved kindness. She listened as they gossiped about customers, whispering things like, "Don't bother with that table. They won't tip anyway." She watched Jason, the newer server, purposely avoid certain customers just because he didn't want to waste time on them. She saw the favoritism, the cold stares, the rolling eyes, and while part of her told her to stay quiet, another part of her, the part that was raised on values of kindness and respect, kept burning inside. What made it harder was that Megan needed the job. Her rent was already more than she could comfortably handle. On top of that, her younger brother was in his second year of college. Their mom couldn't always cover everything, so Megan quietly stepped in. She never told her brother, but she sent him money for textbooks and groceries whenever she could. That was why she picked up extra shifts, worked doubles, and tolerated the negativity. She wasn't there for recognition. She wasn't there to make friends. She was there because she had no choice. But even as she tried to keep her head down, she couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere of Lancaster Grill shifted depending on who walked through the doors. Some days it felt heavy, almost tense, as if the customers could sense the unfair treatment too. Megan often caught herself thinking, why does kindness have to be seen as weakness? Yet she reminded herself, this was the world she lived in at work. Keep quiet, serve the food, go home. That was the survival rule she had followed, at least until that one night when a single customer walked in and unknowingly tested everything she believed in. It was a slow Wednesday night, the kind of evening Megan usually didn't mind. The dinner rush had ended, and the clatter of plates had quieted down. A few customers lingered over their meals, and Megan was refilling sugar jars at the counter. The soft hum of the diner's radio filled the air. Everything seemed ordinary, but ordinary nights sometimes carry extraordinary moments. The bell above the door jingled, and an older man walked in. His steps were steady, but there was a hesitation in the way he paused just inside. His clothes were clean but plain, a button-up shirt that had seen a few washes, simple slacks, nothing flashy. Megan caught the look in his eyes, the quick scan of the room, and she knew what that pause meant. He was bracing himself. People like him often had to. The reaction from her coworkers was immediate, and it made her stomach twist. Beth leaned against the counter, scrolling on her phone without even lifting her head. Jason, who was joking with another server near the drink station, glanced at the man just long enough to make eye contact, then turned back to his conversation like the man didn't exist. No greeting, no welcome to Lancaster Grill, just silence. Megan felt the weight of it, thick and uncomfortable. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. She could almost hear Beth's unspoken words. He's not worth the effort. For a moment, Megan considered doing what she usually did. Keep her head down, stay out of it, and let someone else handle it. That would have been easier. That was the rule she had followed for months. But then she looked back at the man. He stood there waiting, patient but heavy with expectation, like he was giving them a chance to prove him wrong. Megan's chest tightened. She knew this moment mattered. She set down the sugar jar, wiped her hands on a napkin, and picked up a menu. With a warm smile that came from her heart, she walked straight over. "Good evening, sir," she said gently, her voice carrying across the silence. "Just you tonight?" The man's expression softened instantly. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, steady but quiet. "Perfect," Megan said, gesturing toward a booth by the window. "Follow me. Hope this spot works for you." He nodded, his shoulders relaxing as he slid into the booth. She handed him the menu, pulled a pen from behind her ear, and asked, "Can I get you started with something to drink?" "Coffee," he said. "Black. Coming right up." Megan poured a fresh cup herself, even though she could feel Beth's eyes on her and Jason's smirk burning into her back. As she set the cup down in front of the man, he looked around at the room and then back at her. "You the only one working tonight?" he asked quietly. Megan understood what he meant. She flicked her gaze toward the others who were still whispering and watching. She gave a small smile and said, "Feels like it sometimes." The man chuckled softly, then opened the menu. "What's good here?" Megan thought for a second. "Depends on what you're in the mood for. If you want something hearty, the pot roast is solid. But if you're asking me personally, the grilled salmon is my favorite." He raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at his lips. "The salmon, huh?" She nodded. "Promise you won't regret it." "All right then. Salmon it is." As Megan jotted down the order, she heard Beth mutter under her breath, just loud enough for Jason to hear, "She's wasting her time." Jason chuckled. Megan clenched her jaw but kept walking, delivering the ticket to the kitchen without looking back. She knew the whispers, the smirks, the silent judgments, but none of it mattered. She had made her choice, and though she didn't know it yet, that simple choice, to treat one man with dignity when no one else would, was about to change her life in ways she never imagined. The next morning, Megan woke up with a knot in her stomach. She tried to shake it off as she got ready for work, but the uneasy feeling clung to her. She told herself she was just overthinking. After all, what had she done wrong? She had simply served a customer. That was her job. Still, something about the way Beth had smirked the night before, the way Jason kept sneaking glances, and the way Tom peeked out of his office with that calculating look, it all stayed with her through the night. The air outside was crisp as she pulled into the Lancaster Grill parking lot. The sun was just beginning to rise, spilling pale light across the lot. A few cars were already there, including Tom's. Megan grabbed her apron from the passenger seat, slung it over her shoulder, and whispered to herself, "Just another day. You've done nothing wrong." But the moment she stepped inside, she knew it wasn't just another day. The diner was strangely quiet. Normally, Beth would be leaning on the counter scrolling through her phone, Jason cracking jokes with the kitchen crew. But this morning, both of them stood near the counter, their eyes locked on her. Beth wore a sly smile, the kind that told Megan she already knew something Megan didn't. Jason crossed his arms, looking almost smug. Neither said a word. They didn't have to. Their silence said enough. Then came the sound of a door creaking open. Tom stepped out of his office, his face unreadable, his voice flat. "Megan, come with me." Her stomach dropped. She tightened her grip on her apron but followed him into the small office. The room smelled of stale coffee and paperwork. Tom's desk was cluttered, a folder already open in front of him. He didn't bother with small talk. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, let out a slow breath, and said the words Megan never expected to hear. "We're letting you go." It felt like a slap. For a moment, she just blinked at him, waiting for him to explain, waiting for something that would make sense. "What?" she whispered. Tom didn't flinch. "It's not working out," her heart pounded. "Not working out?" She let out a small, humorless laugh. "I've been here almost 3 years. I've never been late. I've never missed a shift. How is it not working out?" Tom exhaled through his nose like he was already tired of the conversation. "It's a decision we've made." Megan felt heat rising in her face. "This is about last night, isn't it? About me serving that man." Tom didn't confirm it. He didn't have to. His silence was enough. Her throat tightened. "So I get fired for doing my job?" Tom's fingers tapped on the desk, his expression cold. "You can collect your final paycheck next week." That was it. No warning. No explanation. Just like that, she was out. Megan clenched her fists at her sides. She wanted to fight back, to scream at him. But deep down she knew it wouldn't matter. They had already made up their minds. Slowly, she untied her apron and set it on the chair. Before walking out, she looked back at Tom, forcing her voice to stay steady. You know this isn't right. Tom didn't even blink. When Megan stepped back into the main dining area, Beth was leaning against the counter with that same smirk. Jason was pretending to wipe down a table, but the look of satisfaction on his face was impossible to miss. They had been waiting for this moment, and now they were enjoying it. Megan's face burned, not with embarrassment but with anger. She wanted to call them out, to tell them exactly what she thought of their cruelty, but she stopped herself. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Instead, she lifted her chin, walked past them without a word, and pushed through the doors into the cold morning air. Outside, the reality of it all came crashing down. For the first time in 3 years, she had no job, no paycheck, no safety net. She climbed into her car, slammed the door, and gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Her chest tightened, her breath coming out short and sharp. How was she going to pay rent? How would she keep sending money to her brother for school? She had no answers. Her phone buzzed against the passenger seat, but she ignored it at first. Staring blankly at the windshield, her thoughts spiraled. Then she glanced at the screen. An unknown number. With shaky hands, she picked it up and pressed answer. Hello? She whispered. A steady, familiar voice came through. Megan, this is Richard Lawson. Her heart froze. It was the man she had served the night before. Megan sat frozen in her car, the phone pressed to her ear, her heart thudding so loudly she could barely hear the voice on the other end. Megan, the man said again, calm and steady. This is Richard Lawson. I'm the man you served last night at Lancaster Grill. For a moment, her brain scrambled to catch up. She remembered his face, the quiet way he had walked in, the way he looked at her with something like relief when she had chosen to serve him. Now here he was calling her. She cleared her throat, her voice shaking. Oh, yes, sir. How can I help you? There was a pause. Then Richard spoke again, his tone deliberate, like every word mattered. I heard what happened this morning. Megan let out a bitter laugh that carried no humor. Of course you did. News travels fast around here. Her fingers drummed against the steering wheel. Yeah, well, I guess I should have just ignored you like everyone else did. Maybe then I'd still have a job. But Richard's next words stopped her cold. That's exactly why I'm calling you. Megan blinked, staring out at the empty parking lot, her breath catching. I don't understand, he continued, his voice firm but calm. I wasn't just there for dinner last night, Megan. I own Lancaster Grill. The world seemed to tilt. She sat up straighter, gripping the phone tighter. I'm sorry, what? You heard me, Richard said. I own that restaurant. And last night, I came in to see how my staff treated people when they didn't know who I was. No warning, no formal inspections. Just me walking in as a customer. Megan's mouth went dry. And what did you learn? She whispered. I learned, Richard said with a sigh, that I have a serious problem. Out of everyone working, you were the only one who treated me with respect. The only one who did her job the way it should be done. Her heart raced. She wanted to believe him, but confusion clouded her thoughts. So you let them fire me? She asked, her voice breaking between anger and disbelief. I had to see what they would do, Richard admitted. I needed to know if this was just about poor service or if it was something deeper. And now I have my answer. Megan shook her head, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. So I lose my job just to prove a point. I know it wasn't fair, Richard said softly. But now I know exactly who I can't trust to run my business and who I can. Megan swallowed hard, unsure if she should be furious or hopeful. And what does that mean for me? There was a shift in Richard's tone, something firmer, almost commanding. It means I want you to come back. Not as a waitress, as the new manager. The words didn't register at first. She sat frozen, staring at the dashboard like it might explain what she just heard. What? Did you just say manager? Yes, Richard said. I fired Tom this morning. He's done. I need someone I can trust. Someone who understands what fairness and dignity look like. That person is you. Megan's chest tightened. Her whole body trembled. Just hours ago, she had walked out of Lancaster Grill with nothing but anger and fear in her heart. And now here was the man who owned it offering her the very position of the man who had thrown her out. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, her voice small. Yes, you can, Richard said firmly. And you should. You've already proven you know what matters most. Treating people right. That's what I need in a manager. Megan closed her eyes, her mind spinning. She thought about Beth's smirk, Jason's smug silence, Tom's cold stare. They had counted her out, thought they had won, but now she had a chance to be the very change they never saw coming. Her grip on the phone tightened, her voice steadier this time. All right, I'll do it. On the other end, Richard let out a satisfied breath. Good. Be there tomorrow morning at 8. You'll start fresh. When the call ended, Megan sat in stunned silence, her heart pounding. Less than a day ago, she had been tossed aside, humiliated, and left with nothing. But tomorrow, she would walk back into Lancaster Grill, not as a waitress, not as someone easily dismissed, but as the boss. And this time, she wasn't coming to play nice. The next morning, Megan woke before the alarm. Sleep had been restless, her mind racing between fear and excitement. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse, trying to steady her breathing. Yesterday, she had walked out of Lancaster Grill with nothing. Today, she was walking back in as the boss. It almost didn't feel real. As she pulled into the parking lot, the early sun spilled golden light across the diner's faded sign. Her chest tightened. This place had been her second home for 3 years. The place that had broken her spirit, the place she thought she had lost. Now it was hers to lead. She gripped the strap of her bag, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. The moment she pushed open the diner door, the familiar scent of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. Customers sat scattered in their usual booths, forks clinking against plates, the low murmur of conversation humming in the background. At first, nobody noticed her, but then Beth did. Beth froze mid-scroll, her phone slipping slightly in her hand. Her eyes narrowed, confusion flickering across her face. Jason, who had been laughing with a busboy, stopped mid-sentence when he saw Megan walk in. His laughter died in his throat, his jaw tightening as his eyes darted toward Beth. Megan let the silence stretch, enjoying it for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. She walked with steady steps toward the counter, set her bag down and folded her arms. Beth recovered first. She scoffed, crossing her arms. What the hell are you doing here? Thought we got rid of you? Megan tilted her head, her voice calm but cutting. You'll find out soon enough. Before Beth could snap back, a door creaked open. Tom stepped out of his office with a stack of papers in hand. Irritation already painted across his face. He didn't notice Megan at first. Beth, I need you to... He stopped mid-sentence when his eyes landed on her. His body stiffened, his expression hardening. Megan, he said slowly, you don't work here anymore, leave. Megan opened her mouth, but another voice cut in. Actually, the voice said firmly, she does. Every head in the room turned. Richard Lawson walked in through the front door, his tailored coat draped neatly, his hands resting in his pockets. His calm presence filled the room instantly. He walked with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to prove himself. Tom's face went pale. Beth's smirk vanished. Jason shifted uneasily. Richard's eyes swept the room, lingering on Megan for a brief second before locking on to Tom. As of this morning, Lancaster Grill has undergone some changes, he announced, his voice steady but carrying weight. Tom, your position is terminated. The color drained from Tom's face. Wait, what? You can't just... I've already heard enough from you. Richard cut him off sharply. You failed this place. You failed these customers. And as of now, you're done. Beth gasped. Jason's mouth fell open and even the customers nearby leaned in, sensing something big was happening. Richard turned to the staff, his expression hardening. Last night I came in here as a customer, and what I witnessed was unacceptable. Some of you ignored me completely. Some of you made it clear you didn't think certain people deserved respect. That ends today. Silence hung heavy in the diner. No one dared to speak. Then Richard gestured toward Megan, his voice steady. The only person who treated me with respect, who did her job with dignity, was Megan, and that's why she is your new manager, effective immediately. The diner seemed to freeze. Beth's jaw dropped. Jason clenched his fists, his face burning red. The busboy in the corner blinked in surprise, like he wanted to cheer but didn't dare. Megan stood taller than she ever had before. For a moment she let herself take it all in, the stunned faces, the shock, the disbelief. Yesterday she had been cast aside. Today she was leading the very place that had thrown her away. She turned toward Beth and Jason, her voice calm but firm. Looks like we've all got some adjusting to do. Beth's lips parted, her nostrils flaring. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered. Richard's voice cut through the tension. "If anyone here doesn't like it, the door is right there. You're free to leave." Beth snapped her mouth shut. Jason opened his like he wanted to argue, then quickly closed it again, his mind already calculating what losing the paycheck would mean. Megan let a small, knowing smile cross her face. She didn't need to say much more. Her presence alone was enough. For the first time in 3 years, Megan wasn't just a waitress who kept her head down. She was the one in charge, and everyone in that diner knew it. The days after Megan became manager were anything but smooth. She knew stepping into this role wouldn't magically change everything overnight. Lancaster Grill had been running on bad habits for years, and people like Beth and Jason weren't going to suddenly become respectful because Richard had given her the keys. Beth barely spoke to Megan unless she had to. Her usual smugness was replaced with tight-lipped silence, but her eyes still carried resentment. Jason sulked through every shift, making it obvious he only stayed because he had no better options. A couple of other employees quit within the first week, storming out when they realized the favoritism and shortcuts they thrived on were no longer welcome. But Megan didn't flinch. She had walked into this knowing it would be tough, and she was ready. She set new rules. Every customer would be treated the same no matter what they looked like or what they ordered. No more rolling eyes. No more ignoring tables. Respect wasn't optional. It was the standard. At first, there was pushback. Whispers behind her back. Complaints about her being too strict. Sarcastic comments muttered under breaths. But Megan held her ground. She reminded herself of why she was here. Not for power, not for pride, but because this place needed change. Slowly, she started to notice small shifts. The kitchen staff, who had always kept their heads down, began to speak up more, offering suggestions and pointing out when something wasn't fair. The younger servers, who once copied Beth and Jason's bad habits, started watching Megan instead. They saw how she greeted every customer with the same warm smile, how she stepped in to help when things got busy, how she treated the busboys and dishwashers like equals. Bit by bit, they started following her lead. Customers noticed too. People who had once been ignored began returning more often, smiling when they saw Megan behind the counter. Regulars who never used to say much started chatting with her, telling her about their day, even tipping more than before. The atmosphere of the diner changed. It felt lighter, more welcoming, almost like a different place entirely. One night, as Megan was wiping down the counter after a long shift, a young busboy named Noah hesitated before speaking. "So, you really got rid of Tom for that?" he asked quietly. Megan looked up. "For what?" "For being unfair to customers," Noah said. "I mean, we all saw it, but I didn't think anyone actually cared." Megan set down the rag and met his eyes. "I care," she said firmly. Noah gave a small nod, relief flashing across his face, and walked away. And in that simple moment, Megan realized something. This wasn't just about changing how customers were treated. It was about giving her staff, especially the younger ones, a better example of how things should be. Weeks later, Richard Lawson walked back into Lancaster Grill. This time, there was no hesitation in his step, no test hidden behind his calm eyes. He looked around the diner and saw the difference. The staff moved with purpose. The customers smiled. The tension that once filled the room was gone. "How's my investment doing?" he asked with a small smile as he approached the counter. Megan leaned against it, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "I think we're in good shape." Richard glanced around, nodding with satisfaction. "Told you you'd be fine." "You didn't exactly give me a choice," she teased. He chuckled. "No, I didn't." Megan's gaze drifted around the diner. "It's strange," she admitted. "For the longest time, this job was just a paycheck. Now, it feels like something more." Richard's expression softened. "Funny how life works, isn't it?" Megan thought back to that morning when she sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, feeling like she had lost everything. And here she was now, not just surviving, but leading. She wasn't just another waitress anymore. She was the boss. And she was making sure that Lancaster Grill would never go back to the way it was. Because sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything. But sometimes it gives you back more than you ever imagined. And Megan's story was proof of that.